And you must be the lady I've been hearing so much about.
And cut.
I'm holding on for my life!
Sydney Sweeney had a rough 2025. Not the whole year. She ended it fine with The Housemaid, which did well enough to get a sequel greenlit. But before that worked out, she went through 3 box office bombs in a row. First, there was Americana, which made less than $500,000 on a $9 million budget. Then Eden turned a $35 million budget into $2.5 million at the box office. And then came Christy, a boxing biopic where she plays Christy Salters, a professional fighter, opposite Ben Foster as her coach and ex-husband. Christy opened to just over $1.3 million. By the end of its run, it had made under $2 million total, just $29 grand internationally. The budget was $15 million, which is actually modest by studio standards, but when your movie makes $2 million, that doesn't really matter. And the drop from week 1 to week 2 was 91.7%, one of the worst drops in box office history. Actress Ruby Rose went on Threads and publicly blamed Sweeney for the failure. She wrote that Christy deserved better and then said, quote, "None of the people want to see someone who hates them parading around pretending to be us. You're a and you ruined the film." Solo has a weird distinction. It's officially the first Star Wars movie to flop. The movie was supposed to cost around $125 million. Then things went sideways. Directors Phil Lord and Chris Miller got fired in the middle of production. Ron Howard came in to take over, and he ended up reshooting huge chunks of the film. By the time they finished, the budget had ballooned to $300 million. It became the most expensive Star Wars movie ever made. It grossed $393 million worldwide, which sounds okay until you remember that studios only keep about half of that after theaters take their cut. Disney's actual revenue was around $197 million on a movie that cost $300 million to make, not even counting marketing. They lost roughly $80 million on a Star Wars film. That wasn't supposed to be possible. The fallout was immediate. Lucasfilm had been planning a Boba Fett movie and a theatrical Obi-Wan film. Both got scrapped overnight. Obi-Wan eventually became a Disney Plus series instead. And then Kathleen Kennedy, who ran Lucasfilm, gave an interview to Vanity Fair where she basically explained why it failed. She said doing a Han Solo movie without Harrison Ford was the problem. She didn't blame Alden Ehrenreich's performance outright, but the implication was clear. People weren't ready to see someone else in that role, whether it was Ehrenreich or anyone else. You can't just replace Harrison Ford. She actually called this flop a learning lesson, and then proceeded to ruin the Star Wars franchise anyway. Guy Ritchie made a King Arthur movie in 2017 with Charlie Hunnam in the lead. The plan was for it to launch a 6-film cinematic universe. That didn't happen. The budget was originally around $90 million. Then the film tested poorly and they ordered major reshoots, which nearly doubled the cost to $175 million. It opened to $14.7 million domestically, which made it the first big flop of 2017. By the end of its run, it had made about $149 million worldwide, which after the theater's cut meant Warner Brothers got back around $82 million. That's not even enough to cover marketing. Total estimated loss was somewhere between $110 and $150 million. That 6-film universe was dead immediately. So what went wrong? Charlie Hunnam gave an interview to Andy Cohen in 2020 where he said something interesting. "I'd like to go back to King Arthur because there's a lot of things went wrong during that and a lot of things that were out of our control." And then he said there was a piece of miscasting that ended up crippling the central storyline. He said it's actually not in the film anymore. He didn't name anyone, but reports had come out before the film's release that Guy Ritchie didn't like Annabelle Wallis's performance as Maggie and had cut her out of the movie as much as he could. Critics actually noticed. Reviews kept pointing out that the narrative felt broken and didn't reflect the original story. Chris Hemsworth is Thor. That's what everyone knows him as, the god of thunder, the Avengers guy, the action hero. In 2015, he tried something different. He starred in Blackhat as Nicholas Hathaway, a convicted hacker who helps the feds track down a cybercriminal. And of course, nobody wanted to see it. The movie had a $70 million budget and made just $19.6 million at the box office. Opening weekend was $4 million, which is one of the worst openings for a wide release starring a major MCU actor. After the theaters took their half, Universal was left with around $10 million on a $70 million investment. At least $60 million in losses before you even count marketing. The reviews put the blame squarely on Hemsworth. The Atlantic called his performance flat out awful. Entertainment Weekly said he was all wrong as the lead. The idea of the guy who plays Thor sitting at a computer trying to look like a genius hacker just didn't work for anyone. And the funny thing is, Hemsworth actually agreed with them. He gave an interview to Variety in 2019 while promoting Endgame, and he was completely honest about it. He said, "I didn't enjoy what I did in the film. It just felt flat, and it was also an attempt to do what I thought people might have wanted to see. But I don't think I'm good in that space." Not many actors will admit the critics were right. Hemsworth did, so I guess we gotta respect that. The only person who didn't blame Hemsworth was Michael Mann, who actually blamed himself. He admitted publicly that it was his responsibility and the script was not ready to shoot. Eddie Murphy is genuinely funny. Coming to America, Dr. Dolittle, Dreamgirls. The guy can do comedy, he can do drama, he's a real movie star. But in 2002, he made a sci-fi comedy called The Adventures of Pluto Nash, and it might be one of the biggest disasters in modern Hollywood history. The movie cost $100 million to make. It earned $7 million at the box office. That's a 96% loss on the production budget alone. Here's what happened. They started filming in 2000 with a budget around $80 million. Then they did test screenings, and the results were so bad that Warner pulled it off the release calendar entirely. They spent another $20 million on reshoots trying to fix it, which pushed the budget to $100 million. And then they just sat on it. For 2 years. The movie was finished and Warner wouldn't release it. When they finally put it out in 2002, it opened to $4 million. The total domestic run was $4.4 million. Worldwide, it scraped together $7 million. Add in the marketing budget and Warner lost somewhere around $113 million on this thing. The Washington Post called Murphy's performance the worst by a professional actor they had ever seen. Rotten Tomatoes has it at 20% from critics and 6% from audiences. Murphy himself named it as one of his worst films. But my favorite part is what the director said. Ron Underwood was asked about Murphy's performance and he tried to be diplomatic about it. He said, "I feel like Eddie gave a lot, but he wasn't feeling that funny, I don't think." Underwood's career basically ended here. After City Slickers and Tremors, he was the director on the rise. After Pluto Nash, he made exactly one more theatrical film that also flopped. Then he moved to television and never came back. The Flash should have been a victory lap. It was supposed to be the big finale for the DC Extended Universe, a long-awaited solo movie that Warner CEO David Zaslav personally called terrific. The best superhero movie he has ever seen. Reviews were actually decent, 63% from critics, 81% from audiences. And it still bombed. The budget was around $220 million for production, plus another $150 in marketing. $370 million total. The movie made $271 million worldwide. Warner Brothers' share was roughly $135 million, not even enough to cover what they spent on advertising. The only thing that went wrong was the movie's lead actor, Ezra Miller. In 2020, a video surfaced of Miller appearing to choke someone before throwing them to the ground. Then in 2022, things got worse. A minor and her mother got a protection order against Miller. The actor was charged with burglar, disorderly conduct, harassment. Multiple incidents, all while this $200 million movie was waiting to come out. Miller did almost no press for the film. Warner couldn't put their star in front of cameras to promote the thing because nobody knew what they might say or do. The Flash opened to $55 million domestic. Second weekend, it dropped 72%, making just $15 million. Third weekend, it made $5 million. When all was said and done, Warner lost over $200 million, the greatest loss the studio had ever suffered on a superhero movie. And here's the dumbest part. Warner would have actually lost less money if they'd never released it at all. They could have just shelved it or dumped it on HBO Max and they would have come out ahead compared to what happened. Disney's been doing these live-action remakes for years now, so Snow White getting the same treatment wasn't surprising. What was surprising was the budget. The reported number was $270 million. But because the film was shot in the UK, Disney had to set up a subsidiary company called Hidden Heart Productions, and UK disclosure rules forced them to reveal the actual spending: $336 million. The movie made $205 worldwide. Disney's cut of that was around $103 million. So before you even count marketing costs, which were never disclosed, they lost about $170 million on production alone. And then they pinned it all on Rachel Zegler. There was controversy around her casting from the start. Some people felt a Latina actress shouldn't play a character described as having skin as white as snow. It was similar to the backlash Halle Bailey got for playing Ariel in The Little Mermaid. Then she gave interviews about how they were modernizing the story and how the 1937 original felt dated, and that didn't go over well either. The producer's son went on record blaming her political posts for the box office flop. My dad, the producer of an enormous piece of Disney IP with hundreds of millions of dollars on the line, had to leave his family to fly across the country to reprimand his 20-year-old employee for dragging her personal politics into the middle of promoting the movie for which she signed a multi-million-dollar contract to get paid and do publicity for. Tom Cruise is one of the biggest movie stars alive. The Mission Impossible franchise basically exists because of him. He does his own stunts, he throws himself out of planes, the guy is committed. So when Universal wanted to launch a new shared universe of monster movies, they figured Tom Cruise would be the perfect way to kick it off. The Mummy came out in 2017. Production and marketing together cost around $345 million. It made $409 million at the box office, which sounds like a profit until you do the math. Deadline estimated Universal lost about $95 million on it. Critics destroyed it, 15% on Rotten Tomatoes. IndieWire called it the worst Tom Cruise movie ever made, and the reviews kept pointing to the same problem. Cruise was trying to make a Tom Cruise movie when the material needed something else. He never committed to being in a horror movie because he was too busy being Tom Cruise. The weird thing is, Cruise's star power actually worked overseas. The foreign opening was $140 million, the biggest international debut of his entire career. China alone brought in $52 million, but domestically, $80 million total. For a Tom Cruise action movie, that's embarrassing. And the damage went way beyond this one film. Universal had planned a whole series of Dark Universe movies. Johnny Depp was going to be the Invisible Man, Angelina Jolie was supposed to play the Bride of Frankenstein. All of it got scrapped after The Mummy bombed.